Alright, Shalom. All praises unto Yahweh Shemi Al Shai. Okay, double honors to the apostles of GMS. Honors to you brothers will be double honors to the apostles of GMS, and honors to you brothers will be pushing this truth in sincerity. So I wanted to do a quick video, and this is gonna be regarding pretty much the days that we're living in right now. The last days of the last days. Okay. And you got a lot of geezers popping back on the scene. Okay, and you got a lot of other individuals falling off. Okay, the simple fact of the matter is, it's all good and well being on fire for this thing because there's something to talk about, but you gotta be on this fire. You gotta be on fire for this thing, 24/7. Okay, the scripture talks about how this thing was gonna be your woman. Now look, I say that, and I cut myself in saying that because ultimately, we're all are born of the flesh out here. Ain't nobody perfect out here, okay? But the fact of the matter is, the words that I'm speaking, those of should be words of inspiration, okay? As to do, as hopefully as I'm going to get into the scriptures and to show you, you're supposed to be on fire for this thing 24/7, man. Okay, that's supposed to be, at the very least, that's supposed to be the ideal. Okay, if you're falling beneath the ideal, then you're supposed to be thinking within your spirit that, wait, hold on a minute, something ain't quite right here. Now I gotta do this, that, and the third to get back on top of my game. It's like being in sports, man. The only thing is there ain't no off season out here. Okay, scripture talks about how you're gonna be, and I ain't gonna get every scripture. I might just stick to this one scripture right here and quote a bunch of scriptures. I'll see how the spirit deals. The scripture talks about how you're gonna be fervent in season, out of season. So if you have an individual and their whole thing is putting a basketball through the hoop, well, they have an off season. They take some time off. The scripture says you can't take that time off because guess what? During the off season, man, small things that are gonna lead up to being the foundations of what you're gonna need in the future. You're gonna be missing out of that. Okay? In other words, if you're training for something, okay, if you're training to get that chip, well, guess what? You ain't gonna get that chip unless you're training in the off season. And if I use that same analogy of the basketball, putting a ball through a hoop, okay, you got certain geezers out there when it's the off season, they ain't taking time off because they're so fervent, they're so focused on that ideal, that goal, that ring, okay, that they're gonna be working even in the off season. So when the season starts, they're gonna be on another level comparatively to those people that were taking time off, man. Okay, and that's how you're gonna see this truth. You're gonna say, look, boom, this is how it's popping up. Now we're in a time where Syria is doing this, that, and the third, and you got all kind of situations popping out there in the Middle East. So you got all kind of brothers on fire now. All right, the subscription box is filled up with videos right now. Okay, but you go back a couple of weeks ago when nothing was really popping off. I ain't the person to be saying that, but really, just as an analysis of what I've seen. Okay, like I said, I'm not in a position to be even saying that, but really, you didn't have people, throwing informations out there like that. People weren't really excited like that, as if to say this thing weren't necessary, as if to say those videos during those period of times weren't necessary. Those were the foundations of what you're gonna need for when this thing pops off. You're gonna be stable, man. Okay, and as for the people that were doing it, they ain't doing nothing different, man. Them brothers ain't doing nothing different because you know what? You be watching them subscriptions, you see the same faces, okay, the same people doing the same thing, okay, because it's within their spirit to do so. But I beseech you, brethren, okay, through the power of Yahweh Shemi Al Shai, that you do the same thing. Like certain brothers that come, the ones I'm talking about, brothers that come to mind, man. Okay, brothers that basically set, and it's starting first and foremost with the elders that have set the standards of the ideal, all right, that you're supposed to be fervently pursuing, okay, in order to make it out of this place. Not just to be on fire for this thing when you got all kind of information coming out, but you got to find resources and informations and video material when it ain't so hot. That's where the difficulty comes in. That's what Jake has a problem dealing with, myself included. Okay. But really, all it comes down to is you gotta decipher what times we're in, man. And if we are in the last days of the last days, and it's tiring, but it ain't gonna tarry for too long, as the scripture says in the book of Isaiah, the 13th chapter. Well, guess what? There's always gonna be something that you can touch on, man. Okay, there's a good piece of a saying that they say out there is that you don't know nothing until you try to teach it. So here it is, you're out there at the camp, you're holding the sign, and you're thinking about that brother that's talking. You're thinking, man, I should be doing that. I should be speaking right there. Well, guess what? You can go home. Okay, them video topics, them topics that you had within your head when you dealing envious. That's what you're supposed to be putting up, man. Because that's gonna really test you to see if you really knew them informations. You can go through the basic scriptures, bread and butter scriptures. Okay, breaking down certain topics. Now you might get 1 or 2 views, but guess what? That's gonna fortify your knowledge. And when Satan comes down heavy in these last days, well, guess what? Okay, guess what? You're gonna be steadfast within this truth, right? You're gonna be like a rock. and you know, there's a certain apostle that goes into how we're the house of the rocks, man. This is a stone like thing right here, man. Okay, so let's go into this scripture right quick. This is the book of Proverbs, the 1st chapter and the 21st verse, and I could have gone to 1,000 other different scriptures to fortify the example I'm trying to do here, but I went to this one, okay, because I like this scripture. It goes into a lot of different things. So the scripture says there, wisdom crieth without, okay, she uttereth her voice in the streets, she crieth in the chief places of concourse, right? In the openings of the gates, she uttereth her voice, saying, how long you simple ones will you love simplicity? So how long are you guys gonna be out there? How long are you gonna be? How long are you Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans gonna love the simple state of mind that you've gonna acclimatize to? And that's good. That's dealing with your average day Negro, Hispanic, and Native Americans. But like I said, we're all children of the flesh. So this demon will jump on you sometimes. You get too simple. You get too relaxed, man. Like a certain apostles gets into. Okay, right. That being elder apostle Gabar, he gets into the fact you don't want to be one comfortable. Sometimes that's too comfortable, man. Okay, you want to stay one comfortable, not too comfortable, man. Because that comfortability, especially for man, even if this was a kingdom of righteousness, being too comfortable, that will allow some poison to come up into your household, man. Okay, you be too comfortable, your woman comes up with an idea and a philosophy and teaches that with your kids, and you're gonna let that slide. That's too comfortable. Okay. And that's what you got out here. You got it to where people are pushing forth an idea, all right, or ideas, all right, that is against the doctrine of the Most High, because the men have got themselves in a comfortable state, man. Okay, they've assimilated their mind to be in a comfortable position. You don't want to be too comfortable, man. You want to put yourself in a position where you're always constantly working. You know, you're gonna be that deer in the middle of the street, man. Okay, when you go out there into the woods sometimes and you got the road day, well, guess what? You gotta drive carefully because you might have that deer. But when you see that deer, man, that deer's gonna twitch and it's gonna move right out the way, man. And that's how you gotta be. Okay, so it says, how long you simple ones will you love simplicity, and the scorners delight in scorning, and the fools hate knowledge. Turn you at my reproof, and I'll pour out my spirit unto you, and I'll make my words known unto you. So when you get that first rebuke, okay, and brothers will begin on to you and saying, look, this, that, and the third, you know, you gotta do this, that, and the third. You're supposed to turn on that, and you really gotta see this video damn near like if it's cutting you in your spirit, you gotta see it as a rebuke, because you might be that individual that's cutting it a bit too fine, man. Okay, like I said, look, I ain't the spirit just got on me to do this video, but I ain't the authority out here. If you don't say what I say, what do I care? I do my best to do the job that the Most High has given me. Right, but for yourself, it's your own salvation. That's why the scripture says you gotta work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. With fear, okay. And if you're fearful, well, guess what? Even when it's the off season, when you haven't got things popping off out there all over the place, left, right, and center, you was gonna be on fire for this thing, man. Going into the basic topics, going into the complicated topics, but not going way beyond your own measure, man. Okay, you was always gonna be. Scripture talks about how this thing's like living waters. You was always gonna find a way for this thing for you to pop off, man. And that's how you gotta be, man. Okay, it says, "Turn you at my reproof, and behold, I pour out my spirit unto you, because I have called and you refused." So the Most I had it to where he said, "Look, this is the standard," and you was lukewarm about it. The scripture says, "Well, guess what? The Most I said this." Because I called and you refused, and I stretched out my hand and no man regarded, but you have set not all of my counsel and none of my reproofs. So brothers were reproving, saying, this is the standard, follow the standard. This is the standard, follow the standard. And he was like, okay, you do it for 2 weeks, do it for 3 weeks, and you really didn't get into it. Well, guess what? This is what the Most High is going to do. He says, I'll also laugh at your calamity, and I'll mock when your fear cometh. Okay, and he says, when your fear cometh as a desolation, and your time and your destruction as with a whirlwind. Okay, the time of Jacob's trouble. All right. And it says, the anguish cometh upon you. Then shall they call up, because it says, then shall they call upon me. So this, ultimately, they ain't really dealing with brothers in GMS. Okay, because most brothers follow that rule of thumb, man. Okay, follow the standards set forth by the elders, man. Okay, but if you're slipping underneath the radar and you're getting away with certain things, well, guess what? The Most High is watching you. Okay, it ain't a thing of brothers watching every brother and seeing what they're doing. That's why the scripture talks about fear and tremble, man. Because the fear is that the Most High is watching what you're doing, and in watching what you're doing, guess what? He could jack your ass up, man. Okay, he could destroy you for whatever BS you're doing, man. Okay, that's falling underneath the radar, and you're thinking you're getting away with it. The Most High is seeing that. Okay, and it says, "There shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me, because they hate knowledge." Ultimately, these dudes that ain't on that standard, they hate the knowledge of the Most High. They see this as a thing of information gathering, so they can feel some type of way. And Lord's will, I ain't one of these individuals. And Yahweh Shimi Al-Shai Ratasa, I could keep to, I could keep to the standard. But you got guys out there that are doing it, man. Okay, so it says here that they ultimately they hate the knowledge of Yahweh Shemi Ashai. They come in here, they see a thing, a fad, okay, a thing to be, something to do, okay. Because let's just be honest about it. Esau's kingdom's whack. So you're always gonna be you're always gonna have Jakes that are trying to be more than the 2/3 individual drinking cognac, okay, that they set up to be. You're gonna see them try to assimilate themselves to be the prophets of the Most High, but ultimately they was gonna be weeded out, man. And one of those means of weeding them out is the high standard that's been set forth by the elders of GMS, man. Okay, because niggas went out there into IUIC because that's an easier thing to deal with, man. Okay, they don't have to hold to no standards. Okay, if the dude wants to put dreadlocks in his head, you can have dreadlocks. If he wants to line himself up, you can line himself up. If he doesn't want to do videos, period, but wants to show up just the Passover, well, guess what? That's enough for the IUIC, because guess what? When they're at the Passover, they're going to give them that money, man. And that's the only standard that they have. That Nate gets his fill of coin, man. Well, guess what? That ain't the same out here, man. Okay? Because ultimately, this is the standard Yahweh Shimi Al-Shai set out. And when you look at the Lord's ministry, man, he was always doing the work, man. He's always doing the work. He said, "My meat is to do my Father's work," man. And that's how you gotta assimilate yourself to do. The scripture talks about how you're supposed to be. You're supposed to have the same mind that is in Yahweh Shai is supposed to be within you, man. To finish to do the work and to finish it in season and out of season. Okay, for they hate knowledge is not true to fear the name of Yahweh Shemi Al-Shai, all right, and they will none of my reproof, all right. So it says, "And therefore shall they eat off their own ways and shall be filled in their own devices." Okay, so pretty much, like I said, there was 1,000 other scriptures that I could have went into to deal with that, but hopefully it was of edification. Most important, hopefully it was inspirational to diligently seek out your salvation, man. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna say shalom.